This video is about the top 10 reasons why truck drivers walk out the door and quit their jobs. Now I've got these in a rough priority, but the top 5 reasons, which I'll list last in this video, are definitely the things that broke the straws on the camel's backs, or the driver's backs basically, and had them walk out the door and quit. Now this might be a good video for trucking mega company owners to watch, although you should be already aware of these reasons. You've just chosen to ignore them, so no whining about your driver shortage after you've watched this video. This video is brought to you by Never Limited Products. The worst part of working outside in the wintertime is wet gloves. Never Limited has sent me a glove dryer here. It sits in the cup holder, dries gloves in a half hour, completely portable, plugs into the power outlet in your truck. I'm actually looking forward to working outside this winter. Reason number 10, poor and inadequate training. There are all sorts of new drivers that go through CDL schools, get their license, get put into a truck, get sent out there on the road, and suddenly they realize that they don't have nearly enough good training to be out there where they are. And they get scared. They look at a situation like a mountain pass in the snow or slippery roads or something, and they realize, and wisely so, that they are just not ready for this. Maybe this isn't the type of thing they should be doing because they're scared. Common sense dictates, you better find a safer job because this is a dangerous one. And they walk out the door. Reason number 9, the job is not what they thought it would be. Now, all sorts of people need jobs and they have good intentions on staying with the job, but they fail to recognize just how much time is involved in a trucking career. And there's an old saying that says trucking isn't a job, it's a lifestyle. Well, that's actually kind of true. And most new guys don't realize this until they're already into it. They're on week 4 on the road. They want to go home and the dispatcher's sending them in the wrong direction. All sorts of guys get into trucking because they don't really realize what's involved. And when they finally do get home, they haven't been listened to by the dispatcher. He leaves them out long periods of time. When they finally do get home, they say, man, I'm not doing that again. That is enough of that. And they walk out the door. Reason number 8. The trucking industry is always changing. And some of these changes don't sit well with drivers. It's as simple as that. The latest example that I can think of is CR England announcing to its solo drivers, you guys better get ready and be prepared to run team, because if you're not going to run team for CR England, we're going to have to let you go. Now that's huge. That's a massive change. All sorts of guys won't run team and they walk out the door. Or another example that is fresh in my memory is when they brought the ELD system in, and all the older senior drivers looked at these ELDs and said, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. And they hung up the keys and they walked out the door. Reason number 7, they're bored with their job, they just need a change, and they walk out the door. And I can understand that. That happens to all sorts of people. They need a fresh change, a new start, and they walk out the door. But bear in mind, when they walk out the door, what they're saying by that is that the job they've had, they don't consider that job worth keeping, and they walk out the door. Reason number 6, and it's a big one, junk equipment. Now, the law mandates that drivers are ultimately responsible for the trucks that they are driving for mechanical problems and failures and are subject to paying the tickets on them. Now, that's hardly fair when you consider that most of the drivers out there today are driving company trucks, pulling company trailers, and really the onus is on the carrier to repair the equipment and keep it up. But that usually doesn't happen because all sorts of carriers just hate to spend money on equipment. And it's time consuming and it's expensive. And they'll say to the drivers, oh no, we had the shop check it and it's okay when the driver finds a problem. And that's a lie half the time. Or they just say, oh, run with it, you'll be okay. Only it's not okay. Best case scenario, the driver gets a ticket. Worst case scenario, he's involved in an accident triggered by mechanical failure. God knows what the results are. Drivers are getting wiser and wiser to this danger in the trucking industry, and they're walking out the door because they won't drive junk equipment. Reason number 5, home time or off time or reset time or whatever you want to call it. The trucking industry has a huge problem with time management when it comes to their drivers. They'll let a driver go home, but they want him back in 34 hours as soon as the reset time is up. 34 hours is not a weekend at home. Or they'll leave the driver sit on the road unpaid for a 34-hour reset, unpaid. Nobody wants that. Or they've got these ELDs telling the driver when they're good to go again, and the driver gets up at 3 a.m. and there's a snowstorm or some miserable condition he can't drive in, but the ELD and the boss are demanding that he go. Time management is a real issue for a lot of truck drivers, and they get fed up with it. They want a normal job with better hours, and they walk out the door. Number 4, and a big reason in the trucking industry to quit your job, is the trucking industry is full of liars. They're systemic liars. It's just part of the industry. And you just can't lie to people and keep doing it and expect to get away with it. Drivers are like anybody else. They don't want to be lied to. And if the dispatchers or the management lie to a driver often enough, they reach a boiling point, and that's it. They walk out the door. Reason number 3, huge amounts of unpaid waiting time. Now, it's been calculated that the average truck driver, the average over-the-road truck driver, spends 20 hours a week at loading docks and receivers and shippers, or waiting in the shop for hours that he is not paid for, hours that he is not compensated for, because the company works on a mile per mile system for the pay. And drivers are fed up with losing all this time. When they calculate all that lost time out that they were unpaid for, it adds up to weeks every year. Lots of drivers figure that out, and they say, you know what, that's enough of that. No more free waiting time, and they walk out the door. Reason number 2, the pay. And the pay has always been an issue in the last 20 years with drivers. If they're paid by the mile, they figure out how many hours they've been at work. They divide that into the paycheck that they get, subtract the money they've spent on food to live out in the road, and all sorts of drivers out there, when they get the final number, they realize that they're working for less than minimum wage. Now, maybe a single guy can survive on minimum wage or a wee bit less, but a guy with a family absolutely cannot survive on that. And to top that, he's gone weeks at a time. All sorts of guys with families look at the situation, they look at the checks, they look at the time that they're away from home and go, you know what? That's enough of that. Or their wife says, you got to get a better job. And they walk out the door. Now, the number 1 reason drivers walk out the door, and this came as a bit of a surprise to me, but the polls show that this is actually the case. Drivers leave because they feel they're being given a lack of respect. And this problem amplified itself through the pandemic. Imagine, and lots of you did this, run hundreds of miles every day through all sorts of weather with loads that were important because people needed the cargo that you had on board, and you run hundreds of miles, you get to the receiver, and they won't even let you use the washroom. Or you're not even given a thank you for a job well done. Or you're not even given a pay raise by the carrier for working through this pandemic and endangering your health. And drivers need to be treated with respect, all sorts of them. Leave the industry and walk out the door because they're not respected the way they should be, and they walk out the door. Now, the real sad part about all of this is all these problems are easily solved by better training, better treatment, and better pay. Yet carriers tend to ignore this stuff because they have the attitude that, drivers are a dime a dozen, and there'll be another driver walk through the door to replace the one that just left, and he'll be walking through any minute. The good carriers did not think like that. The good carriers focus on driver retention. Those are the carriers that you want to work for. Most people work 40 years or better in the course of their lifetime, and that's an awful long time to be at work. You want to find a carrier that treats you well, respects you, pays you well, and that you want to work for and that wants to keep you. And you'll know when you found a carrier like that because you'll look forward to going to work when you go. Bear that in mind. It's important to find a good carrier. Stay safe, keep the rubber side down, find a carrier that you want to work for that treats you well, and I'll see you on the back road.